What's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm here with ESPN's Jay Alter post live from home game. We called Syracuse Northwestern top 10 showdown in the Dome today. It was awesome. Northwestern won 12-8. Um, Jay, what are your thoughts? How are you
Well,
feeling?
first, I am fired up. That was an awesome game. Top five matchup in the Dome. Delaney Schweitzer facing her former teammates. Emma Ward went off. Can we give some props to Emma Ward? The lone wolf, the lone veteran, if you will, with Olivia Adamson out these last two games, and just couldn't be more excited for the sport because when Northwestern goes up 4-0 or 5-0, you're thinking, okay, is this just not going to be a Syracuse team that can be counted on in this top 10? But I thought they showed a lot of grit, a lot of fight back. And I mean, you erase that first quarter as a very even game.
Absolutely. I mean, I know, the draw score in the first half was closer than it was in the second half. Maybe the story of the game that Northwestern started to dominate there was Sam Smith, Emerson Bolig on the circle. Madison Taylor obviously puts a lot of goals in the back of the net, but she does really well on the draw control circle. So it was fun to see her dominate in that game. And she's done it so far in the first 6 games, leading the nation in points.
Yeah. You know what? Everybody thought that Madison Taylor would have an adjustment, kind of stepping out of the shadow of Aaron Kuykendall and Izzy Skane. I mean, she is in bold, underlined, 85-point font on every single scouting report, and she's still dominating. I mean, Syracuse kept her in check. She was scoreless for 37 and a half minutes. So you're thinking, okay, game plan's working. And this is what the great players do. Charlotte, you were in those shoes. It's not a matter of if you're going to break through, it's when. And when that first goal went in for Madison Taylor, Northwestern took off. They totally grabbed back control of the game. At that point, it was 5-4. Syracuse came roaring back. And I was very impressed with how Taylor took over that second half and got Northwestern their first win in the Dome. This is the stat of the day. Credit to you for picking this one out. First win in the Dome for Northwestern in 13 years. 2012. Crazy.
It's almost crazy to think about the rosters that they've had come into the Dome and play against Syracuse, and to not have a win there since 2012 is insane. But like you mentioned, Madison Taylor, I was most impressed with the fact that she was being face guarded all game long. You can get antsy to want to get possession of the ball and get into a flow as an athlete. That's the best way to settle into a game. And she didn't get frustrated. She didn't force anything. And we talked about her shooting percentage, but she doesn't just jack up a bunch of shots. She's very smart, and she's very efficient. And I think that's why she's really hard to scout, hard to stop. They threw different defenses at her all game long. But on the other side, you had Emma Ward, same thing, hard to scout. Do you play her in a man? Do you play her in a zone defense? Because either way, she has different skills to combat both. So it was fun to see them go punch for punch. And I hope we get to see those teams rematch down the line in the playoffs.
I agree. I want to go back to the face guard for a second, Charlotte, because you've been in that situation. So, for all our viewers that are young girls playing lacrosse, when you are up against a face guard, how do you not let yourself get frustrated? How do you find ways to impact the game?
Well, you've got to be on the same page as your teammates. And you saw a lot of today that Northwestern offense was connected because they were able to find moments to get her the ball. You've got to be on the same page in a split second when she's popping open or cutting towards the sideline to try to get the ball. That's a maybe 1 to 2 second window. So to have teammates who are on the same page as you, understanding what you're trying to do and time the pass, but then react. Once she gets the ball, the defense is panicking. They're double teaming her, and that means someone's open. So the rest of their offensive unit has to do their job, and they got to create lanes, help her with an outlet pass, and then find the open person on the backside. And they did that throughout the game. And you're going to see that continue to progress with this newer looking offensive unit for Northwestern with transfers like Nikki Miles and Riley Campbell, just to name a few. But this unit is developing game experience together, and they're understanding how to play around Madison Taylor when she does draw the double team in the eyes of everybody on the defense.
So it's February, very early. This was our first college lacrosse game that we called. I still think it's amazing that 8 days ago you won the first ever WLL championship, and here we are thrust into crazy college top five matchup. I love when these awesome February non-conference matchups, these perennial powers decide to play one another. We had it with UNC Cuse over the weekend and Northwestern BC a week ago with a rematch of that national championship. But I guess my question to you is, I was thinking about this after we signed off the air. So if that truly is number 3 and number 5, right? As we sit here in February, does there feel like a gap between the top two teams, Boston College and North Carolina, and then Northwestern at 3, Syracuse at 5, and Yale at 4? Because to me, and again, a lot can change between now and May and championship weekend, and it will. These teams probably will close the gap. But at least to start this season, it does feel like BC and North Carolina are on a kind of a different tier, a different playing field. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think, you see those two teams play, and the word depth comes to mind, and also experience.
Mm-hmm.
You see Boston College, they return so much on the defensive end. They got, Shea Baker and Lydia Colasante and Shea Dolce returning. And then they have their three-headed monster on attack, Rachel Clark, Emily Pinto, McKenna Davis. And then they have these amazing fifth-year transfers from the Ivy League coming in as well. And, it feels like they just have a lot of experience on this team. Same thing with North Carolina. Last year they had a ton of injuries, unfortunately, but they have almost everybody returning back this year. They've got the former number 1 overall recruit, Chloe Humphrey, obviously. We're going to talk about her as the season goes on, but she is a dynamic and explosive player who can make plays with both hands. And she's got her sister, Ashley Humphrey, behind the cage, feeding her, setting her up for some awesome opportunities. But they've got so much more than that. Eliza Osborne had a great game against Syracuse. You've got Marissa White, who's back from injury too, who has incredible experience. And, she can easily be good for 4 or 5 goals a game. You got Olivia Vergano, who has boatload of experience from Virginia Tech. And you saw her have a strong game this past weekend as well. I mean, it kind of feels like they have an answer at every position. And they returned Brooklyn Walker-Welch on the defensive end, who was also sidelined with injury last year, but has experience at the international level. She has experience on top matchups for that defense. And, it kind of feels like those two teams right now are sitting at the top as the most complete and the deepest rosters in college lacrosse right now.
And again, teams are going to improve from now to May. But the scary part is those two teams are going to improve as well. And I just wonder if there is a gap. I do think Northwestern's a clear 3. And you could make the argument it is a top 3. I was very impressed with the Northwestern team we just saw go into the Dome and win. So if you want to call it a top 3, that's fine. After that, I do feel like there just is a gap that we are not accustomed to seeing, at least this early in the season. Usually we do get into May, and this isn't exactly the sport where, like in March Madness, there's these crazy upsets and you're going to get these Cinderella stories. Usually the top talent does rise. I mean, there's a reason a program like Boston College has made it to a champ weekend so many years in a row, right? And a Northwestern has made it for so many years in a row. I think the thing with North Carolina is because of the year they had last year, we kind of, not you and me, but we as a sport kind of forgot what a perennial power Jenny Levy has built in Chapel Hill. And that was such a one-off because of all the injuries. They are right back to looking like the Carolina that dominated the ACC for a decade.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see them continue to grow and develop, because right now, they're playing with a lot of joy. They're celebrating every little moment as a team, and you could see it when you watch them. And so that's really exciting. It's an exciting place to be as a team, but also, you have, a lot left this early in the season. You have a lot of tests early. Obviously, they're going to go through the gauntlet of the ACC, and, we have conference realignment, and we have new teams in the ACC that they may face. You got Stanford, who just pulled off a massive upset against Virginia this past weekend. You've got Cal with the addition to the ACC, and I'm excited to see them continue to develop. Obviously, they've got so many pieces, and they're fun to watch. But I'm excited to see them continue to go through their schedule.
So you take a look at North Carolina and how they're built, and unlike the last, I'd say 4 years, right, where the top teams and had like the top players. So you look at you in 21 and 22 at Boston College, like you were the face, right? For Northwestern, the last 2 seasons, it was Izzy Skane. There's not really a face of college lacrosse right now, and maybe that's good because honestly, the Tewaaraton Award for the last 4 years has been pretty boring. Like you knew who the best player was, and you were it for 2 years, and then Izzy kind of took, the torch from you. This year, you look at a North Carolina, you look at a Boston College. They're so well balanced that I don't know if there's a clear star, and does the sport need a star? Because I think from a television perspective, Charlotte, it's helped our coverage at ESPN to have a star, to have a face, to build it around you, to build it around Izzy. Whereas this year, a star's not like punching us right in the face. You could argue Madison Taylor.
Yep. Absolutely.
But for Boston College and North Carolina, it's not as obvious for me.
Right. And that's what makes the rest of this regular season really exciting. And obviously, balance is an amazing thing when you're a team because it's hard to guard, it's hard to scout, it's hard to prepare. I think, the race is wide open, and there's a few players that come into mind who, from a television and broadcast perspective, you turn your TV on and you get excited to watch. Obviously we mentioned Chloe Humphrey from UNC. She's young. This is her first season playing collegiately as a redshirt freshman, but she's got style to her game. And I love that. When you turn on the TV and watch her play, former, number 1 overall recruit coming in, and I think she has potential for sure. You've got Aaliyah Poliski on Stanford, who has the ability to put up ridiculous numbers as we've seen throughout, her years so far, but, she's got a tall task ahead of her in the matchup she's going to face. Madison Taylor, like you mentioned, she's, the stats speak for themselves, obviously. Right. But it's exciting to see her evolve her game now that she's not, behind, so to speak, Aaron and Izzy Skane on the Northwestern offense, because now she's going up against the Brooklyn Walker Welches, the Shea Bakers of the world, and drawing the top matchups. So obviously for Boston College, you've got Rachel Clark. She's nearly automatic with a full head of steam going downhill towards the cage. Again, puts up ridiculous numbers. We saw it throughout the entirety of last season, especially when it mattered most in the Final Four national championship. 2 players that might be under the radar a little bit that come to mind for me as well are Anna Brandt, the midfielder at Penn, who put the team on her back this past weekend against Johns Hopkins with the tying goal to send it to overtime. And then also Bridget Duffy, another midfielder who can pretty much do anything. She's a 2-sport athlete at Army. She's a midfielder who fills the stat sheet in a number of different ways: ground balls, cause turnovers, goals, assists, you name it. But she and Anna Brandt are both so scrappy and do everything for their team. So, I mean, the race is wide open, but, I think it is important to have, a recognizable star and see, who will be leading the charge this spring. But I'm excited to honestly watch with you and be in the booth. Yeah. And, like we saw today, Emma Ward, Madison Taylor, 2 of those names. And I'm excited to see, what they can do the rest of the year.
So I feel like, we've been rolling this out over the last 3 weeks. We did the WLL preview. We did the WLL recap. This is kind of our first time going college, and we hope to kind of continue this through the spring, through championship weekend, as we kind of go through this season together. I feel like we've got to let, the viewers, your fans, our viewers, in on some of these inside jokes that you and I have. Like you've said Shea Baker twice. Awesome defender, goes 2 ways for BC. I can't hear it without the Boston accent because their awesome defensive coordinator, Jen Kent, who has been crushing it at BC, big reason why they are the dynasty that they are. the way she says Shea Baker is the only way I can hit. Now, I don't have as good of a Boston accent as you do.
You do.
But
People need to hear it.
every time you say Shea Baker, it's the grizzled Shea Baker. You can't get enough of Shea Baker. So I feel like we need like a Jen Kent audio drop every time you say Shea Baker, just Shea Baker.
we need the Boston accent because it's so fitting. Shea Baker is a serious problem on the defensive end. She can shut down any matchup, but she's all over the draw control circle. She is all over transition. When you watch her play, you feel like she covers every inch of the field in 60 minutes, and she does not stop going full speed. She's a fun player to watch. She's tough to go up against. I got to go up against her a few times at U.S. training camp, and she's physical. She uses her stick really well. She's got fast feet. But Jen Kent definitely says her name the best. Jen actually texted me during our broadcast today, said, "Tell Jay I said hi." She's a Boston legend, defensive mastermind, and her and Shea are a great duo back there.
Okay, so I don't even know if we're going to do guests eventually. I mean, we're kind of slowly rolling this thing out, but I feel like we need to get Jen Kent and Shea Baker on together.
Yeah, we need it.
Because the people need to know what a dynamic duo they are. Kind of in the shadows. Like, and I feel like Jen Kent and her defense likes operating in the shadows. Like they love, okay, keep talking about, Charlotte North, Jen Medjid, now Rachel Clark, we're just going to continue to dominate over here.
Consistently. You saw it in the Final Four last year, especially in their win over Syracuse in the semifinal. It's a defensive, showcase of how to execute a game plan, how to scout, how to just go all out for 60 minutes, truly. And, it's because of the mind behind it all in Jen Kent, but so many awesome defenders in the college lacrosse landscape this season. Someone in the chat wants to know who's going to win tomorrow, Harvard versus UConn. Jay, what do you think?
I've been very impressed by UConn. I think, first of all, that's a program that's slept on. I think when you look at the NCAA tournament, they're always around the bubble. This is the season I feel like they take a step forward. That being said, Harvard notched an epic win over the weekend.
Huge.
So I will say why I bring up March Madness in the bubble is I'm always thinking of these games in February. They matter in May. Yep. If UConn wants to comfortably be in the field, you got to beat Harvard. And if Harvard wants to be in the field, you got to beat UConn. We could be sitting there on Selection Sunday. Those could be the two teams that who gets in, who's out. So that's why I love February lacrosse and games like that. I don't know. I think it's really hard when you get a win like Harvard picked up over the weekend to not have a natural human instinct let up. And I've been very impressed with UConn early in this season. What do you think?
I mean, Harvard, their coaching staff knows how to prepare for a game. You see Devin Wills, the head coach, Becca Block, and Sydney Scales, new addition to the defensive side of the ball for them, and Kenzie Kent, the offensive coordinator. They prepare so well, work so hard, and those girls, it showed in their win over Navy. They went on the road and they beat them, on their home turf, and I kind of find it, hard to bet against them in this game versus UConn. But,
where's the game being played? Forgive me for not knowing. Where's the game being played?
That's a good question. I am not sure. I'm not sure.
Because that could be the difference. Yeah. I think that's a 1-goal game.
Yeah. But like you said, it matters. Strength of schedule matters. We see it every time we sit down at Selection Sunday, but also, these wins add up, and if it's a ranked win versus a loss, it's important. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, that's epic. Hey, can I give a shout out to a game that happened earlier today as we're talking non-conference lacrosse? Iona, brand new program. Yes. #grow the game. Grow the game. I love all these new programs being added. Florida State next season, epic. Iona goes to Stony Brook. Stony Brook's a perennial power. Okay, this is Joe Spallina has his team rolling. I voted them in the top 10 this week. Iona had a lead in the second quarter. Now, they lost the game, but I love it. I love it. Start a new program. Go take on the perennial powers and show what you're about.
I agree. I've always loved that Stony Brook goes on the road or they play at home, and they play a number of different types of programs, and they always spice up their schedule. So I love that game happened. Obviously, our game today was a top 5 matchup, but these February games are getting better every year.
They really are. I could be biased, but I think Gary Gait, when he was the head coach of Syracuse, really did a lot in that department, both scheduling up, like he wanted to play as many ranked teams as possible. But I remember, Charlotte, and this is crazy, it doesn't happen anymore, he would play 2 games in one day. So, like, he would play Canisius at noon, and at 8 o'clock, he would play Albany.
Would you be in the booth or?
Yeah, and I would be doing the games. And then he would then go on the road and play Northwestern, Florida. Like, again, I'm not giving him 100% credit, but it's that kind of outside the box thinking. Like, who plays 2 games in one day? So I do love a program, as you said, that's willing to take on the top 5, top 10 games, but also, hey, let's schedule a new program, give them some exposure.
Yeah.
So, good on you, Joe Spallina.
Someone in the chat wants to know our thoughts on Ohio State. Ohio State has got my vote.
The hay is in the barn in Columbus.
It is. They're 3-0. They beat Denver. They beat Louisville, which was a tough matchup, obviously. Yep. And then they beat Vanderbilt, and they have another matchup tomorrow. But 3-0 is a good start, and a Big Ten that is often really competitive. It's going to be interesting to see them get into Big Ten play, and obviously, USC has been added to that, and so has Oregon. But it's a tough conference to crack through and to make that conference championship, which is really important. But it's going to be fun to see them continue to progress.
So you mentioned Stanford as a team that's impressed you. I would say Ohio State's right up there in terms of teams that I didn't think were top 10, top 15 that now are on my radar for top 10, top 15. And I think, look, Maryland, perennial power, Kathy Reese is going to get them firing. But wouldn't shock me if Ohio State finishes higher in the Big Ten than Maryland. And that's less about Maryland and more of a testament to how impressed I've been with Ohio State early in this season.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, and let's not forget about Michigan. I mean, Elite Eight for the first time last season. Obviously, they dropped one to Yale, but I mean, they still have
Erica Bamford. You know how big a Yale guy I am.
I know. I know. But I'm saying Michigan, they still have Jill Smith. They still have Aaron O'Grady as the goalie, who's been, so strong. And I think they have what it takes. Obviously, a loss like they had to Yale exposes a lot of things, but sometimes that's what you need early in the season to really understand what you need to do as you head into conference play. So I'm excited to see the Big Ten.
Michigan, for me, needs to get over the hump this season, though.
Mm-hmm.
They've been that quarterfinal team, and they need to find a way to get to championship weekend. They are an awesome program. I love their coaching staff. You mentioned the talent they have. But look, no one's going to remember that loss to Yale if they're sitting there in Boston at Gillette Stadium at champ weekend. So there's expectations now there. That said, do we think an Ivy League team, we had a question about Harvard earlier, you bring up Yale. Do we think there's an Ivy League team at champ weekend this season? Because I, here in February, believe there will be one Ivy team in the Final Four.
I find it hard to disagree with that. Obviously, Princeton coming out with the win against Loyola, they look really good early on. Penn, lost in overtime to Johns Hopkins, but at Hopkins, a tough road game, and Hopkins looks really good as well. But, Penn has the makings for that as well. I think Yale is the top dog looking down on the rest of the Ivy League. They got Fallon Vaughn, one of the best two-way midfielders right now, in my opinion, in the game. And you saw what they put together at the end of last season, both Yale and Penn reaching the Elite Eight in the quarterfinals. So I'm excited to see. But Yale's got a tough slate in the Ivy League that they have to get through. Obviously, the win against Michigan holds a lot of weight come Selection Sunday.
Yep.
But what do you think, Jay? You think Yale's going to be the one Ivy that makes it?
They could be. Here's the thing. They've got a tough schedule. So I was looking ahead. They play Syracuse in early April. So let's say they're even humming along in Ivy League play. That's going to be a really tough game. We just saw Syracuse. Now the game's in New Haven, which is very interesting that Syracuse is making the trip to New Haven.
Yeah.
But I do believe if they can beat Syracuse in April, they've already got the win against Michigan. If they then win the Ivy League, they're a top 4 seed. No doubt about it. If those three things happen, they're a top 4 seed.
And then
so you're hosting a quarterfinal versus going on the road. You could get a Yale-Michigan rematch, honestly, in that quarterfinal, which would be fascinating.
Yeah.
What I like about this, Charlotte, is we're not just like, okay, we know who the top 4 teams are. Fast forward to May. I think it's wide open. Like BC, North Carolina, yes.
Yeah.
3 and 4 and beyond, wide open. So I'm curious what our chat thinks. Like who are their sleepers? Who are their teams that they think can make a run as we sit here in February?
I mean, Clemson beat Notre Dame on the road, and again, they're in the ACC that's highly competitive, but they have Kayla McLeod, who looks the best she's ever played. They've got a number of other players who can contribute. So I'm excited to see them continue to develop. But I think to your point, a lot of these teams graduated a lot, including Syracuse, including Northwestern. So you can't tell right now because of how much they're going to develop with game experience. Obviously, the 2 teams that we saw today, we are going to think that they look completely different in April and May, but that goes for a lot of other teams as well. So I think that's what's really exciting as well.
Totally agree with you. And again, we're just scratching the surface on this season. It just began. So it's going to be the teams that make the improvements now until May and play their best lacrosse at the right time of the year. So don't take what we're saying and read into it, but it's fun to have these conversations, and I want to revisit them as we kind of progress. Charlotte, I first of all, I love the chat engagement. I think here I am producing the show for next week already. What we've got to do is if you see a result or a great goal, send it in during the week.
Yeah.
Okay. Comment on this and we'll revisit it next week because I want to start doing like the Ocho. You're the Ocho, number 8, like 8 of the top plays or 8 of the top results from a given week that we could all talk about and know. Because I just think the engagement is what I love about this.
Yeah, and things that people see or questions that people have, if they leave them on this video in the comments after this is over, we'll always revisit those and bring them up. But obviously, college lacrosse, I'm a little biased, but it's my favorite time of the year because you get to watch these players shine after working so hard in the offseason and developing their games and evolving as players and having the most competitive atmosphere. It's fun to be able to call the games with you. It's fun to be able to dissect what's happening and get excited for the next week ahead.
Did you have Sixes fatigue in the first half of our game? It was like readjusting back to college. Like after calling 8 Sixes games where you're scooping the ball out of the back of net and flying the other way to then sit on a draw control for 90 seconds as they're trying to wedge the ball in. Like it's an adjustment.
Yes,
it's an adjustment.
We all talked, you, Rachel, Sheehan, Dana, and I, about how different Sixes is and how the WLL was so exciting. Obviously, every matchup came down to the wire, but also every matchup was near 20 goals. Every team was pouring in goals. And that is very exciting in and of itself. And, we were spoiled. But, college lacrosse is awesome in its own ways. Obviously,
I did appreciate that defense was played today.
Yes.
Like that was awesome to see.
And I loved the defensive schemes. You don't know until you see the first possession for either team how the defenses are going to play each other. I could have never expected Syracuse to come out in a man-to-man defense and a face guard on Madison Taylor, just because the nature of their defense has been their zone, their high pressure zone with a rover or a backer for so long. I mean, for as long as I can remember. But it's fun to see the ways that, coaches and players are developing these game plans based on who they're playing. And I think that's what makes calling the game so fun and watching the film so fun. So, yeah. And so many, again, highlighting the amazing defenders that are in college lacrosse right now. No matter what scheme they play in, you saw Superior Clark today on Madison Taylor. She did a fantastic job, working for 60 minutes to try to deny Madison Taylor the ball, which was fun to see.
No doubt. Well, look, the hay is in the barn. This is just the beginning. I'm making that phrase the official motto of this show. Yes. Something that we say to each other 20 times a week as we prep and watch these games.
30 seconds before we go on air, etc.
Yep. No, it's awesome. I had a lot of fun calling that game with you today, and already looking forward to the upcoming schedule. I mean, even on the men's side, Charlotte, quickly, like I've got Duke Princeton Friday night. Really looking forward to that top 10 matchup, calling that game down in Durham. And I'll tell you what, something's cooking in Chapel Hill, not just Jenny Levy and the women, but Coach Bresci and Coach Petramala going to Hopkins and getting that win on the back of some young guns, including Dom Petramala. That was awesome.
Dom Petramala's shooting showcase clinic, if you will, on Saturday was unique. That performance, was up there. And Owen Duffy, he was the former #1 overall recruit, not last year, but the year before. And he had a great freshman campaign last year. But those two are working really well together, and that's fun to see. Obviously, the storyline coming in to the season on the men's side, in terms of North Carolina, there was a giant X on their back. With all this talent, could they put it together? And they've had a fantastic start to the year, and I love watching their offense click.
And you've got, for UNC, I don't know, Bill Belichick's in town, like. I know he's a football coach, but we all know he's a lax rat. And I just feel like something special on both the men's and the women's side at UNC. I said it to you before the season. I just feel like both of those teams are going to make deep runs. And then, Maryland, Notre Dame, a rematch of the national championship game Saturday in Atlanta, Georgia. Hashtag grow the game. Check out. Come on. Credit to Atlanta, Georgia, pulling 1 versus 2. I love it.
It's sick. I'm excited. I was talking with Paul Carcaterra, our good friend, earlier today.
Over some meatballs and chicken parm.
Chicken cutlets that are so thin that they slide through the door. That's what he taught me. No, but we were talking about Notre Dame and Chris Kavanaugh, and obviously he's bearing a much bigger load. You see Pat Kavanaugh, his older brother, on the screen, who is now playing in the PLL, got traded to the Denver Outlaws. But Chris Kavanaugh, his brother, is doing some awesome stuff for this team this year. Obviously, there's a lot of weight on his shoulders, but him and Jake Taylor are the 1-2 punch of that offense. You got Jordan Faison coming back at midfield. You've got Devin McClain at midfield as well. So a lot of people, have them at #1, and for good reason. They've got a lot of talent. Obviously, Pat's departure is a big hole to fill, but they seem to reload again.
And with that all that said, give me the Terps.
What? Okay.
No disrespect to Notre Dame, they could win a 3rd straight national championship, but this Saturday in Atlanta, I'm taking the Terps.
They looked really good against Syracuse when they won. What was that? Last week, 2 weeks ago?
Last week, they beat Princeton too. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best coaches in the game. Tillman is one of the all-time greats. So, I mean, it's hard to root against him, but I don't know how you deny the talent on Notre Dame's men's team. But we'll see. We'll see, Jay. We'll see if you were right. Check back.
We're gonna have a lot to talk about next week. That's all I know.
I know. All right. Well, that was awesome. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for coming on. And
I love it.
You guys, make sure when this video ends, go back to the video, drop a question, a thought, and throughout the week, if you see anything in college lacrosse that is newsworthy, we will include it in our next episode. But for now, We got a broadcast and a show in today. That's all. The hay is going to bed.